Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do something we've been talking about doing for a long time, and that's the long-term review of the Buchardt S400. I've owned these speakers for a little over a year now. I think I was one of the first people in the United States to have them. I'm not sure. But I've had them for quite some time. I pre-ordered them. I waited the whole 9 or 10 months for them to come in. Back then, these days it just takes 2 to 5 days for them to arrive, but when I ordered them, it was quite the wait. But I'm happy I waited, I'm happy I ordered them. So I did one review on them when they first came in. They had about 50 hours on them. And I stand behind pretty much everything I said in that review. But I wanted to give you guys a long-term update. And also I'm probably going to delete the old video because I can't stand it. The video was grainy. I sounded like crap. So much has changed since then. My sound system's so different now. I just don't even think it's relevant to my channel anymore, really. And I looked like shit in the video. I was about 35 pounds heavier. And if you're wondering how I lost that 35 pounds, I'll tell you the secret. I stopped eating pizza every day and I started exercising. Honest to God, it's like Nicole Arbor says in her Dear Fat People video. You just got to work out and eat less. Anyway. Back to the speakers. So I've had these for a year and a half. They've got thousands of hours on them, and I have learned these speakers break in up until about the 300-hour mark. I didn't know some speakers could take that long to break in, but these do. The bass will continue to change, the soundstage will continue to change, the tonality will continue to change. So if you've bought these, give them some time. Let them play while you're at work or something, you know. So I'll take you through the same like highs, mids, bass, and just kind of how my system has changed and what I use now. Like back then, I think I was using an integrated amp and Bluetooth and iTunes, and a bunch of people yelled at me in the comments and they're like, that's not audiophile. And I listened, you know, I did, and I upgraded, and they were right. You know, there's a huge sound improvements now. So right now, as my system sits, it's like this. I use the Kinki Studio EX-B7 preamp, the Kinki Studio EX-B7 monoblock. You can see one of them here. The other one might be out of frame. I use a low-key tone control. Sometimes it's just set to bypass. Sometimes it's not even connected. Right now it's connected. I use Maze Audio Ref 4 interconnects or Analysis Plus interconnects, depending on just where they are in the signal chain. And Maze Audio Ref 4 speaker cables. The stands are made by Skylan in Canada. And this rack I bought off of Amazon for like $85. It's probably the cheapest part. Oh, network streamer, Bluesound Node 2i. Everything uses the factory power cable. I haven't gotten to the obsessive part where I start to upgrade power cables yet. I might just for aesthetics one day. I do like a good looking cable. I'm not so sure on the sound difference. That's a whole nother story though. So the speakers, the highs, you know, the highs are smooth. They're not fatiguing. I like that. I listen to music for about 2 hours or more when I listen to music. I do the long listening sessions. I can't have anything that's too bright or too fatiguing. That just bothers me. So these are great. They're smooth, but they have tons of detail. They don't have as much detail as the most resolving speakers or like very forward sounding speakers in this price range or more. But for how smooth and laid back the treble is, they are incredibly revealing, incredibly detailed, both micro, macro, whatever audiophile word you want to use for detail. The S400 has tons of it. So I absolutely have no complaints there. The high frequencies are great. Mid-range, look, I don't know how many of my videos that you've seen, but most of the time I just say mid-range is good, right? Vocals sounded good. I struggle to describe mid-range, I'll be honest, I really do. It's kind of my belief that if the mid-range is neutral, there's not really a lot to talk about. There's only a lot to talk about if the mid-range is colored. Like in my review of the Silverline Minuet Supreme Plus, I talk about the mid-range quite a bit more because the mid-range is very colored. It's very like bloomy and there's a lot of decay and it's very like forward and in your face. And it's not natural or neutral at all. It sounds great, but it's not neutral, right? So the S400s have neutral mid-range, and with that said, I don't have a lot to say. Besides, it sounds good. Vocals sound great, and we'll move on to the bass. So the first time I talked about the bass, they only had 50 hours on them, and these take about 300 hours to break in, and bass changed a lot. In my first review, I talked about how it annoyed the hell out of me when I would read a review or watch a review, and I would hear the reviewer say something like this. The speakers had so much bass, I had to check a second time to make sure my subwoofer wasn't connected. Or you'll see someone say, people were checking around the room to see if a subwoofer was hidden somewhere. It's the most bullshit line you'll read in a review, and it's the most bullshit thing you'll hear in a video. People say stuff like that in an effort to exaggerate how much bass a speaker has. Now, with that said, if you said that about the S400, you would not be exaggerating. You would be telling the truth. It has happened to me. I'm somewhat embarrassed to say it because I made fun of the people who used to say that. But there have been a few times that I've turned off my subwoofer for one reason or another. The next day or a few days later, I go to listen to music, and it takes me a while to notice it's off. It's not until an EDM song comes on or a hip-hop song with a super low bass song, like something by like Young Jeezy or something like Put On, that intro has a stupid amount of low frequency bass, or Bass I Love You has a ton of low frequency bass. But any normal song, the S400 is full range. It really is. It truly is. In fact, I will say it has more bass than some full range floor standing speakers in the $2,000 category. I'm not going to name names, but I've heard a lot of speakers, especially floor standards, around $2,000, and the S400 has more bass than a lot of them. A subwoofer is truly optional for this speaker. Now, with that said, do I use a subwoofer? You bet your ass I use a subwoofer, because I like that lowest, last, final octave of bass. That bass you can't really hear, that bass you can only really feel, like that 30 hertz and below bass. 30 hertz is right around where the S400 starts to roll off. That's where my subwoofer picks up. Most songs don't have a whole lot of bass in that region, but for the few that do, I want the bass to be there. So I don't know how much more I can say about the bass. It's controlled, it's articulate, it's tight, it's there in quantity, in quality. It's just really, really good. Now, I did reach out to Mads before I made this video, and I asked him, is there anything that you want people to know about the S400? And he said, yes, there is something I want people to know. I get a lot of, he said, he gets a lot of people asking him how they compare to like huge towers. And he said he never designed the S400 to compete with huge tower speakers. He said he designed the S400 for people where space is a premium, and they maybe can't fit huge speakers in their space, right? He doesn't want the S400 really compared to like huge towers. That was never the design intention. And when we got to talking about it, we both kind of agreed that a lot of times the consumer will kind of decide the end use and the designer's intentions are somewhat ignored. But I thought I would just share that out of respect. Feel free to keep on comparing them to whatever you want. Neither of us can stop you, and it's not that big of a deal, right? Personally, I use bookshelves because I like the aesthetic of them. I think a good looking pair of bookshelf speakers on a stand look a lot better than a lot of towers. I really do. And again, most towers in the $2,000 range, they don't have a ton of bass actually, so I don't think I'm actually gaining much. I've heard towers in like the $15,000 and $20,000 range that have just tremendous thunderous bass, but they're also like 200 pounds, they're really, really large, and it's like, God damn it, you better have a ton of bass if you weigh over 200 pounds and cost $15,000 or $20,000. As far as I'm concerned, the S400 has some of the best bass I've heard for its size especially, and we'll just leave it at that. It is my favorite speaker out of everything I own. It is also the most expensive speaker out of everything I own. I have heard speakers that I like more. They were quite a bit more expensive. Bowers and Wilkins has a bookshelf speaker. I'm not sure of the name. I want to say it's somewhere in the $4,000 or $5,000 price point. I could totally be wrong, but I know it's quite expensive. It's a bookshelf speaker, and I heard that at a show, and I loved it. It was so good. It was so good. I absolutely loved it. If I upgraded, that's like where I would go. I haven't heard anything in this $2,000-ish price range or below that sounded better than the S400 in my opinion. They're still the main speaker I use. I listen to them every day. I come home from work. Every now and then I'll just sit, and just take a little nap and kind of listen to music. I'll wake up, it'll still be on, it'll be nice. Sometimes I'll listen for about 30 minutes or an hour before I fall asleep, but that's kind of my get down. That's how I relax. I just listen to music until it takes me away to La La Land. The S400s help me get there. It's almost like meditation, you know. The build quality of them has been great. I haven't had any problems with the speakers. I did have I moved, right? I used to be in a different room. I used to rent an apartment, and now I have this house that I bought, and I have a nice dedicated listening room. And I was having like a imaging and center image issue. I reached out to Mads and he suggested room treatment because the S400 doesn't really lose much energy off axis, and this room is a little bit on the small side. He suggested that I might be getting a lot of wall reflections, and he was totally right. I added some room acoustics and it made a huge difference. It reduced the amount of like extra bouncing sound being jammed into my ears. And what I noticed was improved clarity, a little bit more detail, and just a more relaxing presentation overall for my long listening sessions, which I absolutely really enjoy. I'm trying to think if I've left anything out. Please do remember, I've had these speakers on a few different setups. I had them originally on just an integrated amp. They sounded really good. Then I added monoblock amplifiers, and the integrated amp became just a preamp, and the soundstage exploded and got even bigger. Detail and imaging got even bigger. And then I upgraded the preamp to the Kinki Studio EX-B7, and everything leveled up even again. So with that said, the S400, I will never say it's a fussy speaker in terms of associated equipment. It will sound good kind of no matter what in my experience, but there's a lot of room in it. So if you have really, really good components, it will reward you even more. If you have very cheap components, it will still reward you because it's still a really good sounding speaker. And I think that's awesome for audiophiles because a lot of us upgrade like I did. Originally, when I bought the S400, I had a $430 integrated amplifier. I had way more speaker than amp. And as I upgraded, the S400 stayed with me because it had enough technology in it to continue to stay with me in my audio journey. Right now I have about, my current system sits at about $12,000. The preamp is $2,000. The monoblocks were like $3,500 for the pair. So I have like way more amp than speaker now, but I would say they're a good match for each other. They really are. I couldn't be happier with my system the way it sits. I might upgrade like the DAC one day, but the network streamers DAC seems just fine. If anyone has recommendations on anything they think I should do, feel free to put them in the comments. I don't know if I'll actually do them. Other reviewers have reviewed these speakers, of course, by now. Thomas in Stereo reviewed these. He did a great review. He had a bunch of people listen to them, so he has some really cool insight. I would check that out. Sean from Zero Fidelity did a review, and then he also did a follow-up review, much like I'm doing now. So there's a ton of insight on both of his videos. I recommend you check those out if you're looking for more of what these sound like and you're in the market and you want more data points, which I definitely recommend. If you're ever looking to buy something, get as many data points as you can, right? That's why there's multiple reviewers. That's why it's not just one reviewer that gets all the views, right? Because when you're looking for something, you look at all the reviews. So do that, check them out. I'll link to their videos for the speaker in the comments. I'll link to the associated equipment in the comments. Oh, I forgot to mention the subwoofer I use is the SB-3000 by SVS. I was using the PC-2000, but when I upgraded the amps and like everything just got better, like I didn't have a tight enough subwoofer for the performance of the S400. So I upgraded to the sealed unit, which was much more articulate and matched the S400's rhythm and timing quite a bit better. At the end of the day, I'll say this. I loved them when I got them. A year and a half later, I'm out of the honeymoon phase, and I still absolutely love them. I really do. They're great. If you're thinking about buying them, check out some more reviews if you must, but just buy them. They show up in 2 to 5 days. I think you've got a 45-day trial period where you can send them back if you don't like them. I mean, you've literally got nothing to lose. I don't know what's stopping you, honestly. I bought them sight unseen when there was not a single review on the internet. You know what I mean? And it worked out for me, so I think it'll work out for you. I think I've yammered on as much as I can. If you have any questions, ask them below. I'll link everything I talked about. And until next time, thank you.